Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Crimson Chronicles podcast. I can't hardly believe it. We're to episode 7 of season number 2, and we're just having a great time as we continue talking about Crimson Tide basketball, and we've worked our way all the way, starting with the 1960s and 70s, all the way through, and now we're rounding the corner and making our way into the early 90s. And so, Tommy, why don't you help us get started tonight and give us an opportunity to meet our guest.
Thank you, Rick. It's my honor and privilege to introduce a legendary basketball player from Alabama, Melvin Cheatum, one of my all-time favorite players. Melvin was a 4-year starter at forward in 1988, 89, 90, and 91 under Coach Wimp Sanderson. Over a 4-year span, he averaged 12.4 points and 6.2 rebounds per game. And this is what was interesting. At the end of his career in 1991, his 1,575 points placed him 8th in all-time scoring in Alabama basketball history. And even today, 33 years later, he is 15th on Alabama's all-time scoring list. And those ahead of him, Reginald King, Eddie Phillips, Leon Douglas, Trevor Relaford, Buck Johnson, Jerry Harper, Hollywood Robinson, Irwin Dudley, Brian Williams, Michael Ainsley, Bobby Lee Hurt, Jermichael Green, Alonzo G., and Robert Ory. So he is in fine company, still number 15 on Alabama's all-time scoring list. Melvin was on 3 straight SEC championship teams in 89, 90, and 91. I know we've talked with Coach Sanderson about those years. And even in 92 was runner-up to Kentucky. And in the 1990 tournament, he was the most valuable player. He earned second-team All-SEC honors in 1990 and made first-team All-SEC in 91. He played 10 seasons overseas, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And in 2009, Melvin was honored as an SEC legend. So it is my pleasure to welcome the legend, Melvin Cheatum, to Crimson Chronicles. Melvin, it's great to see you.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to reflect and look back. You know, it seems like just yesterday that I was a freshman on the campus at the University of Alabama, but my wife made me remember that that was about 37 years ago.
Wow.
So, you know,
Wow.
Time does fly. But, you know, those memories have been slow in fading away.
Well, it's great to have you. And wow, what a great time for Alabama basketball. And we'll get into more specifics in a minute. But tell us about your journey to Tuscaloosa from Winsboro, Louisiana, where you averaged 27.7 points a game and 13 rebounds per game. Your growing up days, your high school career, the Nike camp you attended, and your interest in SEC basketball, Alabama basketball. What did you know about us? And tell us about Coach Polinsky, Greg Polinsky, first recruiting you, and then Coach Sanderson getting involved. Just tell us that whole journey.
The journey started. I'm originally from Inglewood, California. I was transplanted in high school into Winsboro, Louisiana, where I played for the Winsboro Wildcats. Transition was a lot smoother because at that time I started playing organized sports. As a freshman, I guess I came into high school about 6 feet tall. Had a first growth spurt where I went from about 6 feet to 6'4". Played freshman, started on the freshman team, was moved up during the middle of the season to the junior varsity team. And by the end of the season, they had moved me up to the varsity team, and played a lot of games in standing room only environments in high school. Many times I can remember playing in gyms where it was standing room only, and it was a lot of fun. But along that journey, I did not play AAU basketball, so I was not on that circuit to be on the radar early. But through that, I had a chance to go play at the Nike camp. And I'm not sure what led to them discovering me as a talent, but my junior year, I got a chance to go play with the top players in the country, and I was able to shine. As a result, I ended up having about 72 Division I scholarship offers. And part of that happened because, you kind of see a diamond in the rough that nobody's recruiting. So then all of a sudden you went from nobody knowing about this kid, nobody recruiting this kid, to UConn and all across the country. Everybody's recruiting me and trying to fly down to Winsboro, Louisiana to get some FaceTime to visit with me. And it being in an area in North Louisiana, not far from the largest city is Monroe, LSU was a dominant school in the state. And along that time, there was a smaller school called Louisiana Tech that had an incredible talent by the name of Carl Malone, who had recently passed through there. I want to say Johnny Jones, Jose Vargas, and that group of guys. LSU came through the conference, came through at a critical time in that era for basketball to become a more absorbed sport in the area, because football is king. Football was king, and currently football still is king. And even when I came to Alabama, one of the ironies of it was, understanding the SEC and the dynamics of it. Saturday morning, it was easy for me to find an SEC college football game. And I can remember like yesterday, I agreed to actually go to Auburn on an official visit because I had watched a guy playing football at Auburn by the name of Bo Jackson. Alabama football, Auburn football. You had those dynamic guys like the Herschel Walkers coming through Georgia. And so, it was just one of those periods in time where when it came down to making my decision, I kind of narrowed it down to SEC schools only. And out of respect for being in the state of Louisiana, and one of my high school coaches who had gone to Louisiana Tech, I let him talk me into going on an official visit to Ruston, Louisiana, to Louisiana Tech. Out of respect, for the relationships that we had, I gave one of my visits to Louisiana Tech, and one of my official visits, which was to Auburn. After my visit to Alabama, they were so adamant of me not taking the visit that I actually canceled my last visit to Auburn University. Didn't even get a chance to go down there and check out the campus or talk to the coach or interview the players on the team and find out the culture. So as we get through this recruiting process, there was a guy by the name of Coach Greg Polinsky at Alabama. Well, his paper trail actually started at the University of Texas when he was with Tom Penders. And this guy would not take no for an answer. I mean, when he was at Texas, and he was the first coach from a big-time program that had really got on my coattail of contacted me consistently, making sure I didn't have a phone in the house I grew up in, but he would find a way to call the high school when I would be in the gym and say, hey, coach, pull me to the side, say, hey, you got a call on the phone in here. It's one of those colleges want to talk to you. And 8 out of 10 times it would be Coach Polinsky on that telephone. And so he was just I'd say he was one of those guys that made it hard to say no to the guy. But upon that, when I had a chance to actually sit down face to face with Coach Sanderson, he flew into Winsboro, Louisiana. And, as a young kid, coming from the environment that I come from, I felt this is the first business decision that I had to make in my life. So I had to vet things out. And so I had to ask some tough questions I will never forget. We were sitting at a table, and it was Coach James Remedies, my basketball coach, Coach J.W. Mercer, who had gone to Louisiana Tech, and Coach Sanderson and I were sitting at the table in the coach's office, and we were having a discussion, and Coach Sanderson asked me, do I have any questions for him? Now, your legend precedes itself. We see you on television. We see the scowls. Back then television was a bit grainy, so I couldn't quite read your lips. So I asked Coach Sanderson. So I asked him. I said, Coach, didn't grow up with a father, and do you curse your players? And for me, that was a legitimate question because for me, I was always a self-correcting type of kid that if I made a mistake on the court, I was the first to know I made a mistake. And I could kind of glance at you and you glance at me, but you didn't have to yell at me or say anything to me. I know I made a mistake, and I will do everything in my power not to make the same mistake back to back. And just knowing my personality, that if you yelled or start shouting at me, I could possibly go into a shell and you could get nothing from me. So, just understand that dynamic. And when I asked Coach that question, he looked me straight in the face. He said, no, I don't. Well, that's the answer I needed to hear. Now, I can say this for Coach Sanderson over now. Yeah, I don't know what other guys are going to say, but Melvin Cheatum's going to say this about my coach. Over those 4 years at Alabama, he never cursed or said an obscenity to me.
Melvin, how about the officials? Did he ever? No, let's don't get into that. That's probably something we don't need to talk about.
They earn their money. Come on now. Hey, listen, Frederick, they earned their money. They earned their money. Whenever they had a game, and the coach made them earn their money.
Well, speaking of Coach Sanderson, when prior to your freshman season, he said this about you. He said, Melvin's a newcomer to Division I basketball. He'll have to learn about the defensive end of the court, about rebounding on both ends of the court, and about shot selection. In addition, it'll take him some time to realize just how tough the college game is mentally on a young person. What was your transition like once you finally got there and you were under his tutelage and Coach Polinsky and that staff?
Well, I didn't get enough shots. No, but it was one of those deals where, transitioning, for Coach to make a statement like that, he understood probably better than most. And, I like to always give Coach the credit for being a smart guy. And he was the National Coach of the Year prior to me making it to the University of Alabama. And in saying that, Coach had a way of understanding what to say, what buttons to push with each player, right? And so he was an expert, a mastermind in understanding, like, how do I get the best out of you? How do I get the most out of you? Like, you understood with Melvin, he's self-correcting. Tell him exactly what you want him to do, and he's going to go out there to the best of his ability and try to give it to you. Where you had some other players who, I could say he wasn't the coach to ever coddle a player. That really was not going to happen. If you needed to be coddled, you needed to go play somewhere else. Now, if you needed to have fire and brimstone poured and shouted at you to get your attention and get you motivated, that was the right place to be. And I was at the game in Tuscaloosa, Ole Miss versus Alabama, and I was pointing at the steps to my son who attended that game with me, Miles, and I was saying, you see those steps? Man, that changed a lot of guys' attitudes in practice. Like, Coach used as a real motivator, man. Those steps, he said, and Miles looked up and said, man, that's a long way. I said, tell me about it. My thighs start burning just thinking about it, right? But, some of those things, some of those stories that we have, man, we still look back as groups collectively and we laugh about it. But to that point, Coach understood, like the transition from a high school program, it's just bigger than the actual physicality of guys are bigger, stronger, faster, right? You got the mental side of it where I'm asking you to think more. I'm asking you to be more cerebral. We are asking you to get up and to a certain degree self-police yourself away from mom and dad get to class, pass your classes. We're asking you to take care of your bodies unsupervised, meaning like, as Coach's favorite word, don't go down and dissipate tonight. Dissipate, Coach, dissipate. It's like, don't be out dissipating tonight. After a big win, he'd say, don't be out dissipating. Okay, Coach, we laugh about that. Are you going to dissipate tonight? No, I'm not dissipating. But that's one of Coach's words. We had what was later deemed an unfair advantage as athletes, a place called Bryant Hall. And the beauty of that at that time was all of us were housed together. We were neighbors right there with all of the football players, from the Bobby Humphreys to the Cornelius Bennett's. We were just a bond of brothers, football and basketball at that time. But also, you didn't have to worry about what you were going to eat. We were served breakfast, we were served lunch, we were served dinner, we were served snacks. And even when we had big wins, I still can remember we had what was the special training table where you could select the meal that you'd like to have as a specialty for a big win. So, later on they came in and said, I think Ohio State and Alabama, maybe Michigan, we had unfair advantages for our athletes because of the facilities. But that I feel, and even today you can hear it, that changed the connectivity to a great degree of the team chemistry. Like nothing went on in our team that everybody didn't know about. Whereas now, you got guys you're living on your own independently here, and you're here. You got to do more than walk out your door and knock on the next door to connect and interact with your players, right? With your teammates. And so back then it was just totally different, a different environment. But I can say, change, you can't stop change. Some of it's good. You look back, some of it's bad, but inevitably that's not the case of the student athletes today. But I'd like to think that helped us forge better, stronger teams, better relationships, even the relationships with the managers from Joe Corona, David Hewitt, Doug Backus, all those guys that helped, Keija Smith, those guys who helped service the team. And my concern today would be like the relationships may somewhat be missing, like Mr. Ford, Mr. Tommy Ford. We got a 37-year relationship. It goes way back to when we both our hair was the color it was early. I may have enhanced my color for this interview. I may have enhanced mine a bit for this interview. But those relationships that you have, those memories, and the team chemistry was good. And the significance of that for me was my freshman year, as Coach Sanderson called it, dog days, because he was coming off a SEC championship, a SEC tournament championship, a Sweet 16 appearance, and all of a sudden, here we are, 87-88 season. We had one of the top 7 or to 9 recruiting classes in the country. And now we have a new season in front of us, and we got a couple of things that you can forecast for, but you can't plan for, right? We had some injuries. We had guys like our starting point guard, Craig Dudley, had a history of knee injuries. Then he had another surgery prior to the season. And, at the end of the day, the point guard is probably the most important vehicle on your team back then. I'll say back then because truly that was a guy that initiated the offense. We had an incoming freshman point guard by the name of Gary Waits, who went down with a catastrophic knee injury, required surgery, derailed him. He was slowly recovering by the end of the season, but he was not up to that hiccup quick speed that he had in high school. And so we lost Derek McKee. The NCAA deemed him ineligible because of, some contact with an agent. He left early. Derek, in essence, left early to go pursue his professional career. And so we had some things that we didn't plan on having to happen or play with that season. So you come from a coach who was a coach of the year team, who dominated the conference the previous year, team who went pretty deep in the NCAA tournament, to a lot of new faces, a couple of transfer players on the team. I'm sorry, I apologize about that. We had a couple of walk-on players who were added to the team, and we didn't win very much. I mean, we started off the season, we went to Hawaii and played in a tournament. I want to say Central Michigan probably was the toughest game with the kid. Dan Marley was on that team, but we found a way to win that tournament and came back, hopeful for our season. But the reality of the SEC, we were a very young team, and we had a lot of older teams with more experienced and talented guys that we had to face. I want to say our first SEC game, my freshman year, we played against the Georgia Bulldogs, and they had a veteran player by the name of Willie Anderson, who was, an NBA first-round pick, and that was my welcome to the actual SEC. We had to go through some serious growing pains that season. And so, you had to we had to play the Kentucky Wildcats, and they had Rex Chapman. We had even Will Perdue up there at Vanderbilt. We had a lot of talent across the board in the conference early on, and we were coming in a relatively young team, injured team at the wrong spot at the wrong time, point guard position. It created some challenges. But at the end of the day, Coach demanded the best out of us at all times. So we had some really hard practices. And, as he called it, some dog days. We get off the plane a couple of times. We had to go straight to practice and try to fix some things that he felt we could do better. On that note, I'd like to say from our strict coach, Rocky Colburn, because you asked me about some of those transitions, part of it was the physicality of the game. Yeah, you need to be bigger, stronger, faster. You need to have the mental fortitude to handle those tough times like that when you're used to winning and you're not winning. And it's a bit problematic. Things are tense. But I can say the proximity of where we used to all live in Bryant Hall, it allowed us to lean on each other in those tough times. Whereas now, if you go through a stretch of losing, you run a possibility if you don't have like a strong roommate or something like that, you could feel like you're on an island by yourself, and it can lose your way very easily. And and now with the current status of transferring and kids moving, it's kind of hard to forecast what your team will look like the next year. Kids go pro, and that's one issue. But now you got the issue of the transfer portal. Like, okay, I had a great season, and because of the dollars that are available to me, I'm going to seek another playing opportunity, or because I didn't play very much, I'm going to seek another playing opportunity. I'd like to believe that the bond that we had, we talked each other off the ledge a lot of times when kids wanted to feel like they may have wanted to throw in the towel or like, I want to go somewhere else. We stuck together like glue and had the words of encouragement to help each other hold it together. And, okay, it's not dark always. The sun's going to come back up. And I'd like to say, from that experience, we can move forward to the next 3 years and talk about that.
Melvin, y'all finished 14-17 that year, 6-12 in the SEC. But the next year and the next year and the next year, we didn't know it at the time, but going into your sophomore season in 88, 89, something special was about to happen. And not just for that season, but for really the next four. We had just put down the new parquet floor in the newly named Coleman Coliseum prior to your freshman year. Steve Sloan, the athletic director, and Tommy Limbaugh, who handled much of the day-to-day responsibilities of the athletic departments, they're the ones that hired me as ticket manager in May of 1987. They, along with our marketing department, the ticket office, and several others, created this campaign to market Wimp, the Plaid Palace, Wimp Nights, the whole plaid and parquet atmosphere. I remember us selling out every SEC game, and I know the fans sure bought into the hysteria, but what were the players' reactions? I mean, we had students in behind the goal. I mean, it was a great, great time.
With any man, there's a public man and there's a private man. okay, with any coach, public coach, there's a private coach. It's, you know, so as we, we're 18, 19 years old, we, immature, giddy when we can, like half the time, coach might be on somebody and we'd have to put a towel over our head while we're laughing. So we're wiping sweat. So he doesn't see that somebody thinks it's funny what he's saying. But he would, he'd go out there, he'd come out fired up and he'd put on his coat. He'd put on his coat to match the floor. And he'd run over to the student sessions. And if you could go back and watch some of the warm-up tapes, you'd see that we take a pause and warm it up, peeking at coach, giggling. And, I'll tell you, like, if you could find some old game tapes, you'd see sometime where coach would jump on the ref and just start yelling and cussing. And the guys now I'm not going to say cursing. I'm going to say coach would start getting on the ref. He started on his job. You're right, coach, that's your job. Coach would start managing the refs. You literally, if you could find the game tapes, you could see guys on the bench giving low fives when coach would start going out. You see guys on the bench giving low fives when coach would start going out.
I love it.
And so, it was just, we had a really close-knit team. We had a lot of fun together, especially after that freshman year when we got our lumps and going into our sophomore year, we had guys like Marcus Webb, Robert Ory come in, and we were able to start getting our pounds of flesh back. You had Michael Ansley come back and start developing as a leader of the team. You had Gary Waits coming back with 2 healthy legs. So now we could start, we could start playing a better brand of basketball. We had a guy by the name of Alvin Lee come in from Virginia, who was a knockdown 3-point shooter. David Benoit came in. So, we changed the team. We didn't have the ability to go to the transfer portal, but I tell you what, the coaches did go to the JUCO. They went to the junior college and found some help real quick, like guys who were battle tested and ready to go right away. Because that Alvin Lee and that David Benoit, they were game changers for our program, along with those young guys, Robert Ory and Marcus Webb, came in, and we got a shot in the arm, coupled with the fact that a lot of those teams that bullied us, like that Auburn team with Mike Jones, Chris Moore, and those guys graduated and moved on to the NBA or different playing opportunities. So now, instead of us just purely being one of the rawest, youngest teams in the conference, we had some young guys who had some playing experience, and we brought in some junior college guys who had some high-level experience from competing at a very high level and being extremely successful. I want to say Alvin Lee may have led the nation in junior college in scoring, and David Benoit, he was a very raw talent, but super athletic, and you could see the potential in him. And then coupled with that, we brought in Robert, who ended up being a very special player on so many levels, even after college. Bringing those guys in, and we as a team unit sticking close together and realizing that we had a chance to do something special. My sophomore year, we were just figuring out how to be good again and how to win, how to learn how to win, because, part of being better than another team talent-wise is actually knowing how to win, because you can always lose a game. You see that now in college basketball, where this team has more talent, have the most talented player in the country or more talent, but this team with these 4th and 5th year seniors, because they know how to win and how to play together, they'll beat that talent. So it was a situation where we started coming together, learning how to win as a unit, and that made a world of difference for us. And from that sophomore season, things nobody saw us coming. Nobody saw Alabama winning the SEC tournament. And, Coach always talked about the 3 seasons. He talked about the tournament season as being that different season where you get your automatic bid. We walk in here, we take care of our business. We don't have to worry about the selection Sunday crew. And typically back then, the SEC was always the last conference to finish playing before they went in to select the field to play in the NCAA tournament. And one of the things we hung our hat on was like, we're going to leave no doubt. There won't be any questions whether or not Alabama will be in the tournament. You just need to tell us where we're going, and we'll head that direction.
So Melvin, thinking about, I mean, over the course of the next 3 years, you guys went 72 and 27. You only lost 27 games in 3 seasons. What an incredible squad, man. I mean, and I think, what I was going to say earlier is the trial by fire that you guys had during your freshman season. I mean, it really began to pay off, and there was a nucleus that, that Alabama was able to build around. But listen to this. I want to make sure folks understand 88-89, these were the starters. It was you, Alvin Lee, Gary Waits, Michael Ainsley, and David Benoit, and then you had Robert Ory and Keith Atkins coming off the bench. What were the things that began to click during that sophomore season that you guys were able to then build on and carry as you became a junior and a senior, and just the incredible run that you guys had through those 3 years?
Well, I think the chemistry of the team got absorbed. Like, guys knew their role. They knew their responsibility. Like, if your job was to get us 7 rebounds, come in and get us 7 rebounds. If your job was to come off the bench, play tough defense, give us 10 good minutes, well, we expected 10 good minutes, not 9.5. We expected the full 10 good minutes. And we had a large degree of accountability. I will never forget, Wimp put it upon us to manage ourselves at Bryan Hall. And so he had imposed a curfew. And we had one of the leaders of the team who missed the curfew. And I'll never forget, when they asked, did everybody make curfew, Keith Atkins stepped up and said, no, sir. Now, from that point, nobody else missed a curfew. And, and you always can learn, like, life is full of learning opportunities if you just take the opportunity to learn. And what we learned about that was leadership. We learned that in a tough time, Keith Atkins stood up and made a tough call. But had he not made that call, that possibly could have derailed that entire season. Because had he not made that call, in essence, what you're saying is that, it's okay for you to skip the curfew when Coach told us we have a mandatory curfew. But then from that point forward, there was never pushback. There was never a challenge to authority again. And we were able, as a team, to play like a unit, not as individuals. Because if you look back at that team, okay, we did have some guys who had some individual talents, but we didn't play like one off, get out the way, ISO right. Ball, give this guy the ball. We played as a unit. And so, we just had some maturing moments and some defining moments that forever etched in stone that made the world of difference for us to be competitive and become the mature team in that conference at an early age as sophomores, as a team full with sophomores, some talented freshmen, and some juniors. And, so we came in that particular season. That was a watershed moment for us when everybody just manned up and we matured as players.
Any particular highlights that stick out to you from that sophomore season?
I have plenty of highlights. Winning the SEC tournament was a highlight for us because nobody expected us to do that. Nobody expected Alabama, the University of Alabama men's basketball team to rise from the ashes like a phoenix that quickly and be that competitive. But the moment that sticks out to me the most is we were playing in the NCAA tournament, and we got matched up against South Alabama, Peanut Butter and Jelly, Lewis and Hodge. And I will never forget, and I love Coach Sanderson to death, I will never forget, we were up 20 points at halftime. I don't know if you guys remember that game.
Yes, I do.
We were up 20 points at halftime. I'm going to tell you guys what happened in our locker room. I don't know if you guys know this. Coach Sanderson hit atypical Coach Sanderson. Normally, we could be up 21 points. Coach is going to walk in there and tell us what we didn't do right and get on us and push us harder, right? This particular game, coach didn't do that. We're in the locker room. We're up 20. We're waiting for him to come in, fire and brimstone. Coach Sanderson literally, you ask Coach about this. Coach walks into the locker room with a boom box. With a boom box. Do you hear me? A boom box. Okay.
Wow.
So I'm not making this up. All right, what are we going to do? Well, what are we doing today? What are we doing? Coach Sanderson literally sat the box down and he hit play. Hit play. Changed the whole trajectory of the team. He played a song by Whitney Houston.
Oh, that's his favorite.
I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them it the way. Show them all the beauty they can possess inside. So we're sitting there now, 12 deep, towers over the head. It's like, what? Hey, what? Like, what are you doing, coach? What? Is it over? Like, did we win already? What's cooking? So we're sitting there and we go out and we're still giggling and snickering and like, yeah. I believe all the children. Yeah. So anyway, we got the jokes, right? We got jokes. And we came out there and they came out there and flat out steamrolled us that second half. And the crowning moment was, I'm assuming it was an Alabama fan, somebody threw a huge drink from up in the rafters. I don't know if were you guys at the game? Do you remember this?
I was
it
there.
Splattered right in the middle of the court, had to stop the game. They were so disappointed and upset.
Memory in my mind is their coach, Ronnie Arrow, standing on the press table, screaming to his fans, standing up on the press table. I'll never forget it. And it was a brutal loss. Let's go to the next year. Melvin,
Let's get done with that.
I have many favorite quote-unquote teams in Alabama basketball history, and the 89-90 team is certainly one of them. Starters were you, Gary Waits, James Sanders, Robert Ory, David Benoit, and with Keith Askins and Marcus Webb coming off the bench. In December, North Carolina had played in a holiday tournament in Hawaii, and on the way back, stopped in Tuscaloosa, played us because Peter Chilcutt, who was from this area, played on North Carolina's team.
It's from Utah.
Yeah, and then of course the next year, I guess 2 years later, we returned the game in Chapel Hill.
The next season we went to Chapel Hill. His father was my professor.
Yeah, I went. Oh yeah, that's right. And I went to that game. But anyway, so you beat Carolina pretty bad. You finished 12-6 in the league. You went to Orlando and won the SEC tournament by an average of 17 points a game. And you were the MVP of the tournament that year. So then it was off to Long Beach and big wins over Colorado State and Arizona, who thought that they were the best team, in the country, and you beat them by about 20. And rather than coming back to Tuscaloosa, you went straight up to Oakland on the West Coast for the Sweet 16 game against Loyola Marymount. Now, before we get into that game, do you want to hear a Rocky Colburn story?
I'd love to hear Coach Colburn story.
Okay, so Rocky and I were assigned a room together. We were roommates at that hotel in Oakland. So we get in and we're checking in, and the first thing Rocky asks the lady behind the desk says, "Where is your workout room?" And she said, "Sir, I'm sorry, we don't have a workout room." And his face just sank, So he said, "Okay." So we go and we get checked in, go to our room. So I'm calling my wife on the hotel phone. There were no cell phones back then. I'm calling Robin to tell her we had made it safely to Oakland. While I'm talking to her, Rocky is turning our room into a personal workout facility. He is wiping off the plants from the end table, the marble table. He starts bench pressing things and military pressing and doing curls with chairs. And that was his version of the workout. So anyway, back to the game. Loyola was averaging 125 points per game.
That's
and
right.
was led by Bo Kimball, who was averaging 35 points a game. And just 3 weeks earlier, Hank Gaithers had collapsed and died during their conference tournament. And they just dedicated the rest of their season to Hank Gaithers' memory. And unfortunately for us, we were next. Well, we held them to 62 points, but we only scored 60. What are your thoughts on that game, and what was Coach Sanderson's defensive strategy to hold them down?
Well, I can remember that. I remember that game vividly. I remember Steamer was the last name of the surname of their point guard. And Bo Kimball was coming in, averaging 35 points a game. Hank, who was leading the nation in scoring, and I'd watched him play against LSU, and he had given LSU fits. And I want to say earlier that season, we had played LSU, and we beat them in Tuscaloosa. They had Shaquille O'Neal, Stanley Robertson, Chris Jackson, which was for me personally, that's one of my most memorable moments of playing for Alabama, because just the sheer magnitude of the talent that they had on that particular team. But to fast forward it to this Loyola Marymount game, Coach changed our philosophy for that game. And Coach David Hobbs was always responsible for instituting whatever defense we were going to run, whether we were going to slow the ball down, force them to play slower, or force them to shade to one side of the court to run their offense, or try to double team a shooter or isolate a player. David Hobbs really was a mastermind of most of that stuff. But in this particular time, I want to say Coach Sanderson and Coach Hobbs collaborated with this particular game plan, and our defensive strategy was to slow them down. And our number one key to slowing them down was on a made basket, on a dead ball, find the point guard, Steamer, deny him the ball. Because what other teams would allow them to do was they were quick inbound, like after a make, they'd inbound the ball to him. He'd push the ball up the floor before defense could get set. And, if you were lazy getting back on defense, they were already at the rim making layups. Like I want to say Westfall was a coach, and they played a very up-tempo game, run and gun, fun and gun, or whatever you want to call it. We were implementing a strategy to deny the entry pass to the point guard. There were a lot of questions among us as a team as to why were we doing that, because personally, we just felt they didn't have the greyhounds or manpower or depth to do that to us. Because you got to understand, we had a bunch of Dobermans all somewhat built alike, that whether it was me, Keith Askins, Robert, David Benoit, we had a bunch of guys who were, we were like greyhounds. Like, you want to run? Well, how fast do you want us to run with you? And so, we never feared that. But, coach is your team, is your way. And, back then it was coach way or the highway. And, and I'm saying that because, it's not always the case now, because now, things are so fluid that if you disagree with a coach, you got some repercussions immediately. They won't come back and play for you next season. So, we were trying to slow the game down, and we were managing to do that. But we had a stretch. I want to say we had a pretty good lead at one point in the game, and they made their run, which any good team is going to do. No matter what the situation is, you got to weather the storm of the run. But to our point was, part of that defensive strategy was to stall our offense, also to shorten the amount of shots that were taken in the game. I'd like to say later in the game, they came back to haunt us, where we would be late in the shot clock and we're taking bad shots. Instead of 15 seconds in, 17 seconds in, we got a clean look, got a pretty good shot, but that we're instructed, don't take it. You got to get down late in the shot clock. And so, part of that, along with the defensive strategy and the offensive play call that we had for that game kind of came back to bite us in the long run. And along with that, like I've told this story a couple of times, we as a team just didn't feel like, as players amongst us, we didn't feel like, nah, I don't know why everybody's afraid to play them. We're not afraid to play them. They can't beat us. They're not better than us. They're not more skilled than us. They just got a different coach that plays a different way that puts a lot of pressure on the team defensively if you don't have a lot of athletes. But what we had were a lot of athletes, and we had guys that played above the rim that would jump up and contest your shot. And we had guys who, when somebody contested, another guy would follow up and he'd get the rebound. So, we felt we had the perfect storm for them, that if you just turn us loose, coach, and say, let our five play your five, you're not going to beat us. You're not going to beat us. But we changed our whole philosophy from the way we had played all season. We slowed it down on the offensive end, and sometimes that creates a different degree of stress when you got a wide open look that you're going to make 8 out of 10 shots. And you got to stop and find the shot clock and say, okay, it's too early in the shot clock, swing the ball, pull it back out.
Yeah.
Unlike the style those guys are playing today, man, he's like he let those guys let it fly with confidence, man. If you got to look, take that look. But to that point, and we as players, I'll put some of it on us also, because we were peeking ahead at UNLV, who we were licking our chops to get to, because in our mind, we were looking at, you got Larry Johnson, George Apple, Stacey Augmon, Greg Anthony, and Anderson Hunt. That's who Bama wanted. That's who we wanted. We were like, you know what? You look at those Greyhounds. You look at the Greyhounds they got and the Dobermans we have. We were hopeful. Nobody's giving us the respect we deserve, because one, we personally felt we should have got better seating that particular year. You sent us way out on the West Coast to play, and we felt like, we were thinking we're going to be somewhere closer to home. Should have got a better seating, so we didn't feel like the selection committee gave us much respect as a team. But we were just licking our chops, thinking like, okay, if we take care of this game and we get to UNLV, then all the fireworks should happen. And we were really looking forward to that game, because as for us, we were playing with a mindset, next man up, business as usual. Like, just, okay, you want to roll Arizona out here? Okay, who's next? And so we played that particular game, came down to a last-second shot. Actually, I want to say I took our last shot. We had more time on the clock than I thought. Robert Horry was always an excellent teammate to me. And when he got the ball, he told me, he said, his nickname, well, he would always call me Big Dog. He was like, dog, I'm coming to you. He said, I'm coming to you. And he got me the ball, and I turned around and quick shot it, which actually I had about 2 seconds more. I could just turn around, because the guy guarding me couldn't guard me. It was just easy for me to just turn around and shoot over the top of him, because he couldn't contest. He didn't have the length or the vertical ability to contest the jump shot, so I would just turn and shoot over the guy. And so he got the ball to me, and I quick shot it as if the clock was about to expire, and we probably had another 2 seconds, which when you're in the court, 2 seconds is a long time. When you're a fan sitting in the seats, it may not seem like that long, but when you're actually playing and you're executing, 2 seconds is a long time to get a shot off. And so, quick shot the ball, didn't go in. We ended up losing that game. Personally amongst ourselves, we felt like we had underachieved that season, especially after the role that we had taken to get to Orlando and win the SEC tournament. And, we want to say even that season, nobody counted us in to win the tournament that year, because everybody favored LSU. And, like I was saying, they had that high-powered offense of Shaquille O'Neal, Stanley Robertson, and Chris Jackson. And and from where we had come from the beginning of that season, to actually feeling like, I don't care where we are or who we had to play, we're winning. And that was the attitude that we had. But, in that particular game, we came up short. We hated it as a team. We felt like we didn't reach our full potential. But we had nothing to really hang our head down and be sad about. Personally, we wanted more. don't think the pundits or outsiders had great expectations for the team. But, it was just the middle of a great run for us for the time that I was at Alabama. You think about it, like you come in from a freshman year where you're struggling to win any games. Like every game you win, it was a dog fight, tooth and nail, especially in the conference. When you look at the NCAA tournament, there's thousands of kids who play Division I basketball that never have an opportunity to compete in March Madness. And personally, for me, that is always my best time of the year. It's not Christmas, it's March Madness for me. It's like from that selection Sunday to that first round where somebody's going to get upset or somebody's playing in now, and then they got a shot at being a part of the tournament. And then you watch, nobody goes to work the first 2 days. They just need to make that a national holiday, okay? They just get those 2 days off because nobody's at work. Or if you are at work, you're on your device watching your school, well, there are years before me, whether it's a T.R. Dunn or Written Obasahan after me, or Jermichael Green, or you think about all those guys, we still have a bond together from the university and being a part of that basketball program. But we all get happy when March Madness rolls around and you have so many different text groups going on, roll tide. And we had a stretch where we weren't doing so well as a basketball program, and that wasn't fun for us not to be able to wear our script A, which we call it the most feared letter in the alphabet.
Melvin, one of the things, we had Coach Sanderson on at the beginning of the season, and one of the things that he said to us during that interview is that he had regrets about the way that he put the game plan together for that Loyola Marymount game. He had the athletes to be able to run with that team and wondered what it would have been like if he called that game differently. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, because that's obviously one he's played over and over in his mind, and recognize that team was was such a special squad.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear that. Next time I talk to Coach, I'll probably bring that up.
Melvin, moving on to the next season. 1991, your senior year, you finished 23-10, including a 12-6 SEC mark, and yet another SEC championship. Starters were you, Robert Ory, Gary Waits, Latrell Sprewell, and Bryant Lancaster, with Hollywood Robinson and Marcus Webb first off the bench. Any thoughts on that season? Any games that stand out to you? I know there's one in particular I mentioned to you in my notes. I don't know if you remember that, when Marcus shattered the backboard at Wichita.
Yeah, I remember that game. And as a matter of fact, I think that allowed them to get momentum, because they took forever to go find a replacement goal, and we got cold. And I want to say we lost that game in overtime.
Yes, that's correct.
I want to say I hit a 3-pointer at the top of the key to send that game into overtime, and we end up going to overtime. We end up losing that game at Wichita. And Wichita has always been one of those schools, one of those basketball locations that,
that's right,
it's a tough place to win. They always got a solid program, and even now, as of late, I don't know how good they're doing this year, but typically they always have like a older team, which makes them tough to beat, because just as I said earlier, sometimes when you got older players, like you can have more talented freshmen. But I remember that game. Marcus comes through, he breaks the backboard. I don't know what state they had to go to get a new goal for us to finish the game. We're cold. We're on the road. You got the home crowd. We lose our momentum, and then we struggle to get to overtime with a team. I want to say we were ranked possibly in the top 10 when we played that game, and they ended up getting us on the road, and that's one that I'll never forget that game.
Well, if you want to hear the whole story, go back to our interview with Tom Stipe, our engineer producer, who was on that trip and tells an incredible story, the whole thing, including interviewing Wimp on the post-game show.
Well, So Melvin, just looking back on your career, and you've talked about the tight knit relationships and what you guys were able to form in with the squads that you were a part of. What about the bond with some of those guys still today? Who are those guys that you still stay connected to, and guys that you really have maintained a relationship with over the years?
Joe Corona, we text today. He was a manager on the team.
Yep.
We were texting today. Darby Rich, my college roommate, who's actually the current strength coach here for the University of Texas. We text today. I'll see him tomorrow at the game, Texas versus Alabama. I still talk to David Hewitt, was a manager. I still talk to Doug Backus, who was a manager. He's an attorney up in North Alabama now. Keeja Smith, manager, he lives here in Houston. He lives in Houston up the road. Robert Ory, I'll see Robert tomorrow at the game. Keith Askins, I saw him a couple of weeks at the Texas game. He's a scout for the Miami Heat, so he's in town. Gary Waits, we talk once a month. Marcus Campbell, we talk once a month. Ernest Brown, I saw him at Snake. I saw Snake at Marcus's father's funeral in Sumter County. Bryant Lancaster, still stay in touch with him. He lives in Tuscaloosa.
Right.
I apologize, Bishop Bryant Lancaster. Let me
That's
get that
right.
correct.
That's
Bishop
right.
Bryant Lancaster. Whether it's a walk-on or a starter, I still have good relationships with all my teammates. Even
That's
guys
awesome.
I never had the opportunity to play with. Like if you say my name and T.R. Dunn, he knows exactly who I am. He's probably start giggling. Enos Watley.
It's Watley.
So, it's like you go back to like Buck Johnson. I casually see him when I'm in Birmingham for business. We run into each other all the time. It's just a strong knit network. Derek McKee, I was on the group text with him today. It's just from that era, we just have so many connections. And even now, when I run across a younger guy who played at Bama, like I didn't play with Erwin Dudley, but the Brotherhood still exists. We pick up conversations as if we were on the same team together. And so, it's just that connectivity. I think the ultimate game changer, in my opinion, which is I understand capitalism to its fullest, and I understand that when these guys have an opportunity to leave and go get a very sizable amount of money, that we all came to college to become educated, to be employable, right? And some of us have had opportunities to come to college to play college athletics and then go play as employment as a professional athlete. Well, now you got an opportunity to play right now, get your education, and make some money. So I think that kind of changes the ability to connect with players, because now, like behind me, my diploma says the University of Alabama.
Right.
That may not be the case. You may have started at Alabama, but you didn't finish there, So, like even we lost a kid last year that went to go play for Bill Self at Kansas, who had a great run in the NCAA tournament for us. So, like the connectivity is, the dynamics of it now are a bit different. Whereas, like, let's say Sears as a player, well, he's part of the family for life because his last year is at the University of Alabama. And in my opinion, like if you played at Bama and you graduated from Kansas, well, I guess you're a Jayhawk. So, so it kind of changes. It kind of changes like the relationship value of things. Because, like, when I talk to a guy and I walk up and I say "Roll Tide," they know exactly what I mean and why I'm saying it. The connectivity that we had, we lived door to door, ate together, rode together, laughed together, cried together, struggled together, ran together. So, from my group of guys that I came in with, we are in each other's phone consistently. You can't put a price tag on that stuff.
That's awesome.
You just can't put a price tag on it.
Well, thank you. You're following your career at Alabama. Tell us about your journey overseas to play professionally, the teams you played for, that transition from college to professional basketball, the European style, I guess, your points, the different cultures you experienced and everything. Tell us about that.
Well, that was the most fun part of my life, playing basketball in Europe. It was the most fun part of my life. I can never forget, after the draft, not being drafted, I was at camp with the Philadelphia 76ers, and my agent, who, hindsight, he steered me to Europe. He really was Bill McCandless. He steered me to Europe. And, hindsight, you look back like, well, you got 10% commission paid by the team for me to go to Europe versus a 3% commission if I stay here. And at that time, the rookie contract was $69,000. So it was a better payday for him to get me overseas. But when I did go overseas, I loved it because when I got there, the team built the offense around me, and I loved to shoot the basketball. Honestly, I was never interested in learning how to pass the basketball. I'm just being real about it. I always felt like if you're good at a bad job, they're going to give it to you. So if coach found out I could pass the ball, he might expect me to do it. So I just wasn't real interested in being good at a bad job, passing the ball. So when I got to Europe and they built the teams around you and the offenses around you, and you were always first option and second option, that made it a lot of fun playing. I played in Athens, Greece I played in Athens, Greece for 6 years. My son, Miles Cheatham, he was born in Athens, Greece. Then I played 2 years in Spain. And, some of the relationships that I made 30 plus years ago playing overseas, I still have friends there. Learn to speak Greek. I still speak Greek fluently. Some of the life lessons that I learned, I'll never forget when I was playing with a team called AO Daphne, my first year in Athens, Greece. We were at a big luncheon, and I was being introduced to the team, and I was sitting to the left. I was sitting to the right side of my president of my team, and he owned this huge trucking company in Athens. And so they were introducing all the board members to the team. He paid attention to me, and he leaned, and my name Melvin, they would call me Melly, which means honey in Greek, but they Melly. So he leans over and he said, I'll say it in English. He said, hey, Melvin, hey, don't be like the typical Americans that come to my country. And I turned to him and I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he asked me the name of the man to his left, and I said, he's a plastic surgeon, and I said his name. Then he asked me the name of the guy that was beside him. I said his entire name, and he owned 3 Mercedes dealerships. Then he asked me who was that sitting in that corner over there. I didn't know his name. And he said, but you met him. I said, I did meet him. I don't recall his name. He said, you recall the name of the wealthiest people in this room. He said, in my country, we work to live. And he said, in your country, it seems people live to work. And they define people by asking what you do for a living. And that puts a value on the relationship instead of he said, he owned those Mercedes because you asked him what he does for a living. And he told you. But he said, and you remembered his name. And his point was, the finest person in this room very well may be the janitor over there. Mm-hmm. And so, just putting a perspective on life lessons that I've learned. Just having the opportunity to learn different cultures, to experience different foods, different ways of life, to make friends on the other side of the globe that I still have friendships with today. It's very special. Those very memorable times. You never feel like you have a job when you're getting paid to play a sport because you're running, you're staying in shape, you're getting a check to stay in shape, you got celebrity status. And my thoughts growing up from where I came from, my dream was never to play in the NBA. My dream was to make some money, to be able to have a family and to provide for my family. That was my ambition. That was my goal. So for me, I was not starstruck on where I had to earn it. I didn't got some guys that would never go overseas. I have to be in the NBA. And they blow earning opportunities because they end up never fulfilling their financial fullness or never making it to the NBA and never really cashing a decent check because you wouldn't get outside your comfort zone. But for me, that was never my, I loved to play basketball, wanted to play basketball for a living, right? And for me, it didn't matter as long as it was a fair living. And so when I went to Europe, I loved it. I loved it. And I try to learn by watching other people. So at 10 years, I probably could have pushed the envelope and kept playing. But now I'm able to run a 5K or run a 10K with my son. He played college football at San Diego State. He played defensive tackle, and now he looks like a big basketball player because he runs. And I didn't beat my body up so bad that I have bad knees, bad hips, or things of that nature. So, it's like I still have, like, quality of life is really important. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have good health, what do you really have? And, I have no regrets about it, not a single regret. And, of course, my agent tried to talk me out the house, but I wouldn't let him do it.
And so, Melvin, just catch folks up after your 10-year career, after you've retired. What are you doing these days?
You don't have enough time to actually hear my entirety of my story. But in brevity, what I'll tell you what I do. I'm a landlord by trade. I do Class C and D real estate. I house a lot of people from drug rehab programs. I house some veterans. I house some people who have a hard time finding a place to get into the rental market for whatever mistakes they have made previously, whether it's credit or lessons. They had to learn some lessons about being a tenant. And so, I kind of give people a second chance on having a home, a roof over their head. And generally, that's what I do for a living now.
What an incredible thing in a world where folks like that many times don't have many options, and so it's great to hear that you're taking care of the least of these, and that's what an incredible thing. Well, Melvin Cheatum, we have absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this interview. It's been, for me, I mean, the teams that you played on are like, that's the center of my world for Alabama basketball. Those are the years when I was in high school and just entering college, and I mean, that's when my fandom was at its height. And so to have had the opportunity to sit down and have this conversation with you and to hear some of your memories, some of the things that you were a part of, to share some great stories, and then to see what you're doing now. It's been an incredible journey with you. So thanks for sharing with us. We finish every one of these shows the same way. We want to end the same way we greet folks in Alabama, right? So we're going to give everybody a big, hearty Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Thank you,
Gentlemen,
Melvin.
thank you for having me.